Hello and welcome to Cloud Conversations with Rue and Pete. My name is Peter Rising. I'm a Microsoft MVP in Office Apps and Services. And as ever, I am joined by my good friend, Rue Campbell, who is looking as only he can look. Rue, how the hell are you today, my friend?
I don't know what that means. I'll take it as a compliment and I'll roll with it. Looking particularly
you know that saying. You know that
something.
saying. That's a wrestling reference. You should know that one.
Oh dear, no, I feel uncultured.
Ric Flair,
no
looking
way.
only as he can look.
Well, I'll take
That's
that.
got to be an old reference.
I'll take
There
the
you
Ric
go.
Flair reference.
You've ruined the gag. Never mind.
No,
Never mind.
yeah,
How are you anyway? Are you well? How's your week been?
All good here. All good here. And I have the pleasure of introducing today's guest, which is Steve Goodman, who, and I'm going to read off the biography here, is the chief editor for audio and video content and technology writer for Practical 365, focused on Microsoft 365. A 9-time Microsoft MVP. Is that still right, Steve? Is it 9?
Yes. I'm thinking, where's this bio came from?
You probably wrote it. He is the author of several Exchange Server books, including an exam reference, and a regular conference speaker, including at Microsoft conferences such as Ignite, TechEd, and Future Decoded. He's worked with Microsoft Tech for over 20 years beginning and has been writing about Exchange and the earliest iterations of Office 365 since its inception. And he's also a principal technology strategist at Content and Cloud during the day job. So, Steve, how are you? And thanks for joining us.
I am fantastic. I have a coffee in hand and I'm ready to go.
Awesome. Good
stuff. I think that we've heard enough about you now. That's all we need to know after that introduction. End of show. See you next time.
If it feels like I was writing something to fill some sort of space.
It's as if you were asked to write something. Anyway, that's you suitably buttered up with the flattering introduction. So I guess, if we just start then, so if we talk a little bit more about yourself and your background, the first question that always comes to my mind when I talk to folk such as yourself who are known for being, 365 experts, how did you get started in that? Because it's not like you just land in this position of being a 365 expert. What's your journey to get to where you are today?
I started playing with computers and then got a job doing them, and poof, I was an expert. That was it. I don't know. How short of a version do you want? I suppose. Where do you want me to go back from? Because I don't want to bore you.
Oh, you wouldn't bore me at all. I guess I wouldn't want to go back to 4 years old or something like that.
I was bored, and my dad bought me a computer. Well, I didn't plan on going into IT. However, I think it was something that I was good at. I had an idea originally that I was going to do something in the media, but also I really liked working with computers, and I had a part-time job at the weekends doing computer sales. Those like shops where they build a custom PC,
sure,
sell parts at computer fairs at the weekend, and there were some things that sort of blew my mind. One of those was Exchange Server, because back in those days, sort of 1999, 98, 2000, email was like POP3 in like 5 minutes, and that's wait. And the weirdest thing to say, I suppose, but it just blew my mind that you sent an email and poof, it just appeared in the other person's inbox instantly. I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. And then I sort of went from there, from several different jobs, working, I guess, from the bottom upwards, from as in handing out leaflets at computer fairs, building computers, configuration centers, support, obviously, not necessarily help desk, but first line support. And then moving up, I was quite lucky to find a job that worked well for me, taken on permanently. And then 10 years into that, I sort of felt like I wasn't really going anywhere. And I was doing the same things over and over again. And I didn't have a particular focus on a particular technology. And I saw folks who were doing VMware stuff, because I've been doing a lot of that, as a lot of people were, up from about 2005 onwards, And I looked up to them a lot and started blogging myself. Office 365 came along. I was working at a university at the time. Live at Edu was a bit like BPOS, but actually more of a precursor from the Exchange side, because Exchange Online still has references to it. That's what it was called when it came about 2009. And I thought, well, this is a good thing to start writing about on my blog, because not a lot of people are doing that or writing about it. I'll also write about Exchange as well, because I was on TAP programs, and sort of went from there, really. There was somebody, one of our marketing folks said, the key to writing a blog is consistency, right? Just keep writing, and just follow that advice, writing about things that I was doing that interested me, finding that a lot of this stuff early on wasn't documented at all, like federation, hybrid federation, right? There wasn't really any documentation at all. And at one point, Microsoft documentation pointed to my blog, which was cool. This is before Office 365. It was in the Live at Edu days, but it was a good chance to sort of jump on something where the VMware stuff, to be honest, was also interesting to me at the time, but it wasn't something where I was perhaps going to be able to make an impact. And how many times do you want to install ESXi, before it gets boring? Whereas doing hybrid migrations never get boring. That's the best. So just carried on blogging, and I think that helped a little bit with the career, but moved jobs from there. But that's given it. It's being around at the earlier days of Office 365 was a good opportunity to just get a lot of experience behind you, that you can build upon. Sharing with others, useful as well.
Awesome. And one of the things that you mentioned, how you were there at the beginning for Office 365, and it's radically different now than it was then. When I look at Microsoft 365 and Teams is all encompassing and all consuming now, what are your thoughts on where it kind of goes from here? Is Teams, is that the end game for 365, or what happens now? Do you have another product that comes out in a few years and then transforms everything again?
Well, obviously I don't know the answer to that.
No spoilers.
No. It does make me think about things that customers have said, and one thing that stuck in my mind was a conversation with a customer. It was with their CIO at a large insurer, and it was one of the fairly open sort of thing. Whole IT team are there. I was with Microsoft as a PTSP, which is when, if people like Graham Hosking and folks like that who are quite active in the community as well, then helping them out effectively when they're quite busy, helping out their teams where they need a bit of technical resource or somebody to come and do a demo or something like that. And it's just stuck in my mind because he was going quite hard on Microsoft, and I was there sort of as a Microsoft, but obviously as myself, work at a Microsoft partner, and pointed out how slow some things have been to move. So, for example, customers have been asking for as long as anybody can remember, say 20 years, for things like signatures to be stored in the mailbox, right? Or being able to send as another address, which has only came in the last few weeks. But then other things change so rapidly that they've changed massively before the point that they can adopt them. And this was about 3 years ago. So Teams had recently sort of came out, and part of this was, well, they've just adopted Skype. Now we're saying going to Teams, and he's like, what's next after Teams? It's Microsoft T-Rex, and it's just like the most random thing to say. But it was the expression of sort of the frustration. The first thing that pops into his mind, and that is the customer frustration, isn't it? That Microsoft are very, very much all into Teams, and they do worry a little bit that Microsoft will have a next big thing. Windows 11 being something that is it just a version number? Is it a whole new version?
We were assured there'd never be another Windows, weren't we?
And now they're like, oh, it's just a dev advocate. But I'm sure that's got to have been repeated verbally to various customers because it's sort of spread. And, the Microsoft are a company of 100,000 or more people, aren't they? So, an account executive or salesperson may have said that thinking that was true genuinely. So you can never say never, can you? But I hope that really it's got to evolve, and whatever is next has got to move things a lot more on. Like, do you remember we saw the first demonstrations of the fluid framework? Very what's that film with? I'm gonna try and think of a film with Tom Cruise where he's doing action stuff, and then I realised that's a terrible sort of
all of them.
Minority Report.
Sure,
where the demos of the fluid framework are really sort of they're abstracted from a computer screen and its components that move around, and we see some of that might be coming to Teams, but it all looks quite fluid, I suppose, into the rest of the user interface. It doesn't look wrong, but you sort of think, well, let's see the next thing. But the next thing's got to sort of be much better. It's got to be more than Windows 10 to 11 look and feel. I think for customers to accept it, it's got to be transformational like Teams was. And I think they've set the bar relatively high with that. So we will see.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Teams has been a massive success, obviously. And I'm going to admit something here. When I first saw Teams 4 or so years ago now, I looked at it and I said, that'll never catch on. So boy, was I wrong. But what a success story it's been. But for every success story in any tech company, I mean, you can include Apple in that and other examples, but there's always going to be the flip side of that. What would you say have been the flip side of that in the last few years, Steve, in terms of O365? What has fallen on its behind, shall we say, and not been a success?
I'm just thinking back to for Practical 365. I did a video at the end of the chat with you for our interview. And I asked you what's the worst thing that you've seen in Office 365, and I thought I don't have to answer a question like that.
It's come back to bite you. I can't remember what I said, actually.
I can't either. I'm not like that interview in Wayne's World that just goes, we could say anything, Gov. That's an old reference. I can think of a few, and you know what? I think it's bugbear of mine is things that Microsoft announced with an add-on license where they haven't really thought out the value proposition for a customer. That's trying to talk about it in I suppose, the most Microsofty, salesy way. The customer has to see the value in something to buy it, right? And we've worked at the Microsoft partner side, I guess on the customer side as well, and it is difficult to justify why you would buy certain things when you don't know what value they're going to have, but you're assured that other things might come into it, but we don't know what. And then pressure will come from customers, partners, the community, and then Microsoft, or with the pandemic, things will then come out and be free again. Some of these can feel a little bit like a little bit of a misstep, and that's the thing that perhaps I think that there's several problems with, because I fully support the idea that perhaps that E5 will never be everything, but also there was a point when Microsoft 365 E5 or Office 365 E5 before it was kind of touted as that's the gold standard. That's like buying the Bentley with the special 300-gram watch in the middle of the center console. It's going to have the lot, and a view I think at the time of E5 coming out that there was still a lot of value to build, and Microsoft folks probably expecting that people would need to get value out of that over time. And I think there's also a lot of customers who have perhaps bought a Microsoft 365 E3, takes some time to get full use of those services, though they might be eager to up level to E5, or perhaps have the security or compliance add-on SKUs. But still, it's a journey for them to get there, and then you're finding these other products coming in from the left field, and you could either take one or two views, like, well, at least I don't have to upgrade to E5 to let my marketing team do big events, or for my middle manager who is never getting a PA, but's getting a virtual PA to have a £10 add-on license. Oh, I'd imagine trying to make the case for that. I know I'm not important enough to have £120 spent on me a year, but I'd really, really like something that schedules my meetings and makes it look like I've got a PA. Oh my! You can get a virtual PA for £10 a month of an actual person that would organise your meetings, and that's the sort of thing that, if it's £1, £2, or $2 or whatever, then those are the things where perhaps they need to speak to customers a little bit more and understand that before they sort of announce this, because we're people that want Microsoft to succeed. We support it, but we also are in, I think all three of us are doing jobs where we hear from lots of customers on a regular basis how they feel about this, and with the community stuff as well. You also hear the unfiltered version that's slightly different to how you hear it from a customer in their professional work sense, and you sort of take all of that in, and I think you have your finger on the pulse, and you're also outside Microsoft, and you see from the outside in. So it's not a dig at Microsoft at all, but it is those are the things where you try, if your job, you've been told to go and explain the value of this add-on type SKU that has been sort of panned, then you know that you're in for a bit of a hard time, and you've got to put on that face of that, I've got to be completely honest with you, but I've also got to try and explain why it's valuable as well, and then I know that you're going to tell me I'm wrong. And those are perhaps the key thing that I'd mention, and that's probably that's probably. I don't feel good saying that, because I don't want to pan Microsoft, but you've got to be upfront with them. And in our last podcast, in the podcast we did in the middle of June on Practical 365, Paul Robershaw was slightly less complimentary about the whole thing. But things like that new license, you love the service. What it does is great. He uses it all the time, but he's never going to be able to justify spending $10 for his dev teams for every person to get it. That's the issue. Stuff like that.
Yeah, I think Syntax is a good example of that. At the moment, Syntax is a separate add-on license, and to me, it would feel more logical if that was bundled in somewhere else, whether that be E3 or E5, I don't know, but who's going to go off and specifically get that just on its own? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, when you get into the security side of things as well, things get a little bit difficult to discuss with customers. I find it especially, I believe it's things such as, so Office 365 application guard and things like this, and, save files with Office 365. And these are locked behind E5, and they're addressing fundamental security problems with the software that you're developing. When you have that conversation with a customer and they say, okay, well, you want me to pay £45 a month to protect the software that I'm already paying for. And there's a little bit of a fine line there. They do expect to have to pay something for that security, but when it's addressing the more fundamental flaws and things like macro exploits, which have been around for as long as there have been macros, that's where it becomes hard for customers to sympathize with the fact that, yes, Microsoft is a commercial company. I think everyone does understand that. It's just some pills are harder to swallow than others.
Yeah, and I think if it's something where there's a clear ongoing compute or storage requirement that is costing money when it's being consumed, then I get that. So perhaps on the Syntax side, then every time it's used, it's got a cost. But if it's software that is that you wonder whether there was a decision, whether it should be included or not, and you don't know what goes on behind the scenes, then it's perhaps harder to understand. But the one that always stuck in my mind in particular was when they do something and then they backtrack. And there was some point that it was going around the computing press that they were going to charge for inactive mailboxes that you onboard to the service. I don't know whether either of you remember this. And
Vaguely rings a bell, yeah.
I
think so.
A lot of Microsoft MVPs were very, and most likely customers and partners, like the likes of Transvolt and Quest and all those sort of folks. This came as a bit of a shock and a bit of a worry because my point was, imagine you've got a job role, assistant manager at a store, and that mailbox will consume storage over a period of time. So if a person is there for 10 years of storage. However, if there's a high turnover, then that role will be replaced and there'll be a new mailbox each time, but there may be a requirement to keep the data that fulfilled that role. Yeah. So my view is, and I think that it took I'm not sure whether they ever got it or I'm just explaining it badly, but the volume of data consumed in the service would be equal because it's the role and there's been several people in that role. So why is a customer paying a tax for high turnover of staff, basically? Because you wouldn't charge them if that person had stayed. So it's just going to encourage terrible behaviours by a customer, such as making a mailbox a shared mailbox when they leave. And they changed their mind around that, and that's good because they listen. But it was like it's like things like consult people first. You wonder where the decisions come from to announce it and see how it lands. Because it doesn't build trust.
One of the kind of sticking to the point of mailboxes and Exchange Online, I guess, and it's taking the user feedback. One thing that it's been outstanding for years now, and you wrote about it for Petri, was when HAFNIUM and the Exchange 0-day exploit attack was in the news, and you wrote about, I think the article was called "The Problem of the Last Exchange Server," whereby in a hybrid environment, to officially be supported, you still need an Exchange server on-prem. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and why Microsoft still haven't come up with a solution?
I can't tell you. I can't say for why. I do assume it is a more complex problem to solve than it appears from the outside. All right, but yeah. So if you've got if you've got an Active Directory on premises and you've got an Azure AD tenant, then you will link the two most of the time with Azure AD Connect and have a hybrid identity platform. Now, that means that some attributes are managed on premises and AD is the master of those attributes. AD is managing most of the attributes, and including all the Exchange-related ones. So what are the tools to manage an Exchange user's attributes? It is the Exchange management tools. And since 2010 onwards, then those tool sets need an Exchange server to run against or to run on. And in fact, 2007, God, I think. The management tools you could install separately. But you, even for PowerShell to work, you couldn't just leave the PowerShell module there and use it. You need to have the user interface. And of course, since 2013, that's been a web-based interface for GUI management, and that means, and from 2016 onwards, it's a mailbox server with every single role. So to manage Exchange, you do get a free hybrid license, and Microsoft have said that that's suitable for hybrid management. You need a Windows Server license to run it on, obviously, but you have to install that because it's the supported way of managing the Exchange attributes. And that's sort of borne out by what you hear whenever this has came up previously in forum threads. There'll always be somebody who says, well, I've got rid of mine and everything has been fine. I'm just using ADSI Edit, or I'm just using Attribute Editor, or I'm just adding an SMTP address to the user, or I've written my own set of PowerShell scripts. And unfortunately, most of the people that are quite willing to say, I've done this for hundreds of customers over and over again, are the same folks who are just stamping on one or two attributes and not the full set, and that is not good, because the objects may at some point get damaged. It's unsupported by Microsoft. Someone at some point may well have to go into that environment and stamp all of their users with all of the other bits that it needs, or it might stop them from truly being able to switch over to whatever Microsoft's future model is. So that's been a bit disappointing that Microsoft haven't solved that yet. But most customers do need to relay email out. And what better tool than, apart from HAFNIUM coming along, what better tool than a Microsoft Exchange server? Right. Your receive connectors would already be there. You can port them over relatively simply. And you should have, hopefully, the skills to carry on managing that on an ongoing basis. So theoretically, a lot of customers won't need to get rid of the Exchange server, because in theory they're still going to need something for email relay. But that could be an edge server sitting in the DMZ, and probably with Exchange exploits should be. And that's the overall problem, and probably one aspect as to why Microsoft haven't solved it.
I guess if that probably happens in a lot of cases where outside looking in, we're looking at this and we're thinking it's just a few attributes. How hard can it be to come up with a solution? But you do find that with that and then other things such as migrating a device straight from on-prem to AAD only join, it's not as simple. There are things going on in the background that we just don't have visibility into. And one of the things I'm interested in is, mentioned in your introduction, 910 MVP and things like that. Do you find that as being part of that community that Microsoft, is the feedback taken seriously? And do you then get to see things actually come about as a result of what you're suggesting?
Yeah, there's been quite, there's quite a few instances where, that is taken back. That Exchange Online archive, inactive mailbox, scenario being one of them, the Outlook signatures as well. I think that example of that CIO, I didn't go to the, soon after I went to the MVP summit, I think I mentioned it on the side, then one of the other MVPs, Jeff, sort of went, that's all right, and sort of took it upon himself to say, right, let's challenge Microsoft to solve some of these problems. And Microsoft said, get enough votes on user voice and we'll do it, which was good. So the MVPs as a community are able to affect change sometimes, but I think a large customer will often have more weight than several MVPs trying to represent a unquantifiable number of customers, where Microsoft could, if they listen to everything that we asked for, then they might be taking on board asks that are personal wishes, or asks that don't really reflect such a broad spread of customers. So you've got to get that sort of support that can be evidenced, I think, to really sort of get some of those changes in, because they'd be wrong to listen to somebody that just shares stuff with the community and is probably reasonably confident, but might have some really silly ideas that if they did, might actually be a bad thing.
That makes sense. I mean, I guess it's Microsoft do have some tremendously big customers, and you have to follow the money, I guess. So if the customer's saying this is going to be a deal breaker for us, it makes more sense to use that evidence-based approach rather than some folks on Twitter. Right? That makes sense. Kind of shifting gears a wee bit, and speaking of Twitter, one of the sagas that I've enjoyed following on Twitter is your home lab that you're currently going through the process on. Can you tell us a little bit about how that's going?
Yeah, I'm just going to shut the door. Whilst my daughter was coming in, I could hear some noise on your side, so that I feel too bad. I'm not going to shut it away.
Oh, we have.
She wanted to draw some.
We have no production standards on this show. Don't worry about it.
yeah, so the weirdest thing about that is I told my dad about it, and my dad's like, "Yeah, I know, it's really good. I've seen the videos." I'm like, "What?" Because he's not on Twitter. He's like, "Oh yeah, your brother showed me," and I'm thinking, "Oh god, I've still got my brother's punch down tools. He'll have seen it. I've had them for 5 years. I haven't given them him back."
5-year rule. There goes now.
I should order. I did only a few quid off Amazon and stuff. I've just been in my toolbox. Oh yeah, so I moved house recently, as quite a few people have done in the UK, and we thought we'll have one last big move, hopefully. 40 this year, so getting old. Not looking
No
at Peter
comment.
at all.
No comment.
So got a little bit more space, and I think a lot of people have wanted to try and get a bit more space. But when we moved house this time, my wife, be completely open, took a bit of equity from the move from the last house, and thought, well, this time what we're going to do is try and make the place look nice, because the last house, when we moved out, there was sort of the light fittings from when we moved in and stuff like that. So the house is looking nice. My other half doesn't really want computer junk lying around either. So got to try and keep the place looking good. As they say, happy wife, happy life. And I do want her to genuinely be happy. So, but I also want to do the stuff I want to do, and I didn't want. I've had the smallest room here as my office, which is fine actually. But as we moved in, I'm like, okay, I'll put my stuff in the micro office because it's smaller than my last house. And I thought I can't have a computer sitting here. And you can see behind me on the wall, I've put in some of these sound things so I don't have to, when I do a podcast, talk really, really close to it. Try and stop some of the echo. So I didn't want something blaring away in the corner either. So I put some stuff under the stairs, Raspberry Pi and all that kind of stuff. And thought, well, now, and I'd also built out the PC, which is going to be my new server, which is, you won't see it very well, but sort of on the right here. So, and when I built that out, you could buy graphics cards. And apparently you can't now. So I couldn't buy another one to replace it. So I thought, well, this is my server now. It's got a good graphics card in to try and test out NDI, streaming, all that sort of bits and pieces. I'm going to have to buy another server because I need to. I don't want to run all of my lab on this, and 64 gig isn't going to cut it. It'll do a lot of stuff like running lots of clients. So maybe I'll run the clients on that. And then I can fire them up, shut them down as needed. But I need something else that's going to run a wider lab. And I'll come back to the sort of cloud bit afterwards, I suppose. But I thought, well, I'll buy a mini PC, like a Nook size thing, and put that under the stairs with the Raspberry Pi, keep everything quiet out the way. My other half, not so happy on me using under the stairs, but the internet comes in, it's fibre, and the house came with Ethernet ports under the stairs. By that, I'm like, this
nice.
is like so sad. Like everything I've ever dreamed for. My wife's bought the house and happy with all the other bits. I'm like, when people come around, I'm showing them. It's so bad.
Buying a house for
like,
the ports in the wall.
Only my dad, who used to work for BT, cares, but even not as much as me. So we moved in, did all those bits, and really happy with that. But I thought I can't really sort of. I looked. I can't spend. I can't justify £1,300 or so on another box. Really, if I'm thinking about things sensibly, then yeah, I should just make do and run it on there. And I thought I'd had a look on these on eBay several times before and dismissed the idea at our old house of doing this. But I looked at my garage and I thought I've got big space in the corner there with nothing in it. And thought I could put a rack there. And I haven't bought the rack yet, but obviously if I got a rack there, I could put servers in there. And what's the other side of that wall? Under the stairs where everything comes in. I could just drill a massive hole through the wall and feed the cables through. And the bank holiday before, I've been doing some DIY. I'm not bad at DIY. However, I was putting up a mirror, and tell me to stop if I'm going on a bit too long. But I was putting up a mirror, and I hammered through a pipe, and water came spurting out in my face. Literally, I pulled out the thing I was putting in to sort of do a pilot hole, pulled it out, straight in my face. I'm like, oh my God. And it's a bank holiday. Oh my God. And I'm like, Lise. And she comes and she said, what have you done? I'm like, quick, go turn the water off for the house. I'm like, oh my God. off to Wix to go and buy some. But stupidly, I'm like texting my friend Jason. Like, Jason, you'll never guess what I've done. And he's like, just call a plumber. I'm like, well, look where I am. I'm texting as I'm walking around. Look, and I'm like, I don't know what type of pipe it is. Bought all the bits, fixed it mostly. But I bought one of these multi-tools. And as I said, I'm 40 this year, so maybe this is my future going forward. Bought that, cut a big hole. Realised, yes, this is entirely beyond me. And I called a plumber. He took 5 minutes to fix it, all sorted. But he said, well, because you cut the hole, I'll only charge you the call out fee, not the 160 quid or whatever for the first hour. So I'm like, free multi-tool, not bad. And I just had the electricians fit some Ethernet ports, and I saw how easy it was. Like, the walls, it's a new build house, just like cut a square. I'm like, I got a multi-tool. I've got a desire to cut holes in my new house.
I just get pictures of this. You know the Mr. Bean sketch where it's Christmas and he's cutting through. The wall, and he cuts the phone line and everything.
I was thinking more of the like Peppa Pig, when Daddy Pig tries to put up a picture. So
does he end up taking the bricks out?
yeah. So I told Jason and my colleagues that I was thinking of doing that then with this server, because I bought the server off eBay, set it up excitedly, put some videos on that. It's kind of like weird because I buy these servers when I was working at the university. That's it's about 10 years old, but 2 CPU, the kind of stuff that we would run 20, 30 VMs on, but just single 1 terabyte. Samsung Evo 870, decent SSD, very fast. Bought the right card, so it's so it performs well, does trim and all the other bits that it needs. An older SSD for boot drive for Windows Server 2019, and dedupe the 1 terabyte hard disk, because then it's like a TARDIS. You can sort of keep putting similar VMs in. You have a base template for Windows Server. Just keep putting them in, and it won't take up a lot of space. You do 5 Exchange servers. It's not going to take up a lot of space for the Exchange installation and stuff. So reasonably low power. Only need to plug in one power supply. Great, brilliant. And the noise is fun when it instantly reminded me of when servers would arrive in the office. Well, to my office in a big open plan office, and I'd get them out of the box, put them on my desk, turn them on, and then they go woo for about 5 minutes, and then cool down a bit, and everyone would go what? And I didn't always do that. I was not that annoying, but I did it a few times. It was instantly like everyone in the house said, "What's that noise in the back room?" And it's like, me, turned it on. It's not going to make that noise all the time, is it? No, don't worry. Ooh, back to normal. So in the garage, it's sort of pondering along in there now. I've moved it into there. But yeah, I told my colleagues I was going to drill through the wall, and everyone's like, don't do that, Steve. Don't do that, Steve. So with the last bank holiday, got to about 7 o'clock in the evening. Wix is still open. I went to Wix, bought a massive drill bit, and drilled the hole through the wall. And now I got my Ethernet in there as well. I put up a few videos of that, which was I would, if I look at like home lab threads and stuff like that on Reddit, for people that I guess haven't been building servers before, and they're doing this, I think, why would you do that? So I understand that this is slightly sad, and not something that I ever envisaged. I never thought, I definitely had never any intention of buying a new server. or
But it's
buying
already been of use
buying
to you,
an
though,
app.
hasn't it? It's already been of use to you because, from the point of view that on Practical 365, you've wrote about this and had a video on this where you've got the post where you've got your little Lego Friends characters joining the Teams call. Tell us a little bit about all that.
Well, yeah, you could do that in Azure and quite easily as well. But I'll get them here. These. I've got another little or larger person at the door. Hello. This is where your 12-year-old daughter wonders why she's got a dad like this.
Hey.
But yeah, so they're the real life versions of them. This is my wife's. I bought it for her. So it's
And now you have
it. Somewhere to put it until she moves it somewhere that she wants. But we both been big Friends fans, and I also took down a box full of all my daughter's Avengers characters. And loads of Marvel characters, including ones like this, and just started doing that late one night because I was doing a video for Practical 365, and I got all these VMs that were running on this. I migrated them over to the server because running 6 or 7 of those, even with single CPUs, and trying to record a video at the same time, it's doable. Running Teams together mode, it's just about doable, but it sort of creaks a little bit, for obvious reasons. But obviously on the server, or if you were doing it in Azure, you're just spinning up the machines with a couple of virtual CPUs, 16 gig of RAM each, run all the Windows 10 VMs, so they perform a lot better. But I was just using, if you've ever seen a Microsoft demo tenant, I literally just got the 648 by 648 images for each of the people, and that was all right for a screenshot, but it wasn't quite so good for a video. And on each of those, running OBS, virtual webcam, loading what was the image first of all from the Contoso tenant. I thought, well, if I record this little stop motion videos for each of the characters, then I can just drop in the video files, and then I've got effectively a pre-canned, I can switch in between the different characters as needed, a pre-canned sort of moving set of pictures, and I'm not nicking video off the internet or reusing the podcast interview videos, which I'm sure no one would want me to do. I thought it's a good way, and it's perhaps a little bit more fun than just the same old, see the Microsoft demos. It's always the same people who are holding that pose for a very, very long time. So I thought it'd be fun, and of course having that extra horsepower. That's not what the server was, or the lab's sort of intended for. It's really for those complex scenarios that are sort of difficult to build out, to really sort of understand, where someone's got 4 forests on different exchange versions, and keeping a DAG running that I've started on NT4 with Exchange 5.5 and built over some time a messy AD that's went through all the motions, so that I've got something with a fake history. I mean, a test lab or a test environment built from new is never going to represent anyone's environment. But it'll always be much cleaner. But it's just so you've got those harder to reproduce environments for when you need them. And just last Friday, useful again to have that to fire up even just the simple one, just to reproduce the weird thing that I saw in a customer environment as we were doing the first Exchange 2016 server, because this customer, like a lot of these, came from the HAFNIUM thing. It's in a lot of people doing breaking Exchange. Customer knows Exchange, okay, but it's not their thing. They always follow guides to do it, and wanted to reproduce. I needed to reproduce the thing that happened to them, and again, having that lab was useful. But it was something that I hadn't seen, weirdly, because they wanted to, let's just do it through the GUI though. Smaller customers, sort of about 1,000 people. Let's just do it through the GUI because that's how we're going to do it. We want to be able to do this ourselves. So rather than do it through the command line, it's like, yeah, sure, not a problem. it's supposed to work, and then it didn't. And it's like, is that me, or is that them, or is that a problem? Can I say in my environment? And I've always found that really useful to be able to see what I'm about to do and run through it. So if it's something unfamiliar, like, I don't know, what was Forefront, there's TMG, and what was the other one? The one no one liked and was rarely installed. Completely escapes me. Kind of like Forefront Internet Access. Just having one of those senior moments. But yeah, where it's something you don't see a lot, but you've got to do a particular change, or you want to understand the ancillary item that you're not an expert in, because it's part of the work that you're doing. It's always really useful to have that around, not just for Lego characters in the background.
Yep. Well, and it's because you're using Hyper-V, or even if you're using VMware, it's so easy. You just take a snapshot, and if you're testing something and it doesn't work out, just revert to it and then test it again, and just kind of give yourself the confidence that it's the system, or this is a known fault. It's not just me about saying explicit there. I don't know if we can swear on this show. We don't need to decide that.
We can do whatever we want.
Making sure you don't mess anything up. There's the 4-letter word I was looking for.
Yeah, you can always edit things out later on, can't we, if we need to? But we should put the link in the show notes, actually, to Steve's Herculean efforts on his lab and the post that he's did on the NDI stuff and all that. So we'll include all that. But for right now, I'd just like to change gears a little bit and talk a bit about your MVP and community journey that you've been on. Obviously, we've already mentioned a few times on the show that you're a 9-time MVP. Can you tell us a little bit about how that journey started for you, how the MVP program has changed over the years, and how do you balance your work life to making your community contributions?
I think I started blogging. It was Stevie G's tech blog, Steve Goodman's tech blog, stevieg.org, and it didn't really have any sort of direction. As I mentioned earlier, a lot more of what I was doing was around Office 365, Live at Edu, Live at Edu, and an Exchange in particular. So I was just doing that consistently for some time, and I think it was that things like the MVP program. You've got to perhaps people often think you're an MVP before you're ever awarded, I suppose. Like you, Root, right? You know, people knew who you were from your blogs and writing probably before. Yeah, I don't know whether this happened to you, thought you were an MVP and said, "Oh, you're an MVP though." And you went, no. And pretend you didn't want to be one a little bit. No, I'm just happy to.
That happened recently. Yep.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? You can't. Sometimes it will never happen. And I remember talking to a couple of MVPs, Neil Hobson, perhaps Nathan Winters, who very long time Exchange folks will probably remember. And both of them are like, don't you ever want to be an MVP? I'm like, I would like to, but I don't really, we'll see what happens. And I think I was nominated. I didn't even know how the program worked, but nominated a few times and nothing came of it. And I think around that time, there's a few of us who were really, really active in the community. I think I'd spoke at conferences. I'd written my first book and had that published, and writing for mxexchange.org on a regular basis, lots of sort of guides on Exchange and Office 365. But it's just like one of those things where you think, oh, I wonder whether I'll be sort of next, and then you aren't, and then you aren't again and again and again. Myself, Michelle DeRoy, Paul Cunningham, I think we're awarded around about the same time as each other, and obviously really, really pleased about that. but didn't necessarily think that would happen year after year, because sometimes you don't think you've seen that other people, there's MVPs who are posting really good content 3 or 4 times a week, and you think, that I couldn't give the time to do that. I've got a job, I've got a family, and family comes first. Job is what happens in the day and pays the bills, and then I have to make time for this outside of all of those things. So sometimes it's quite hard to be consistent over the years. So often you'll sort of resolve yourself to the fact that, well, you always think you'll sort of be the last time, and you don't want to do it just to try and maintain getting an award for it. You've got to enjoy it. So yeah.
I mean, I seen, I don't want to say recently, but certainly within the last couple of years, there's other folks like Don Jones, the kind of PowerShell training guru. He kind of actively decided, well, I'm making a shift to my career, therefore MVP, I'm just going to let that expire. And I'll be honest, when I seen that tweet, I was like, I didn't know you could lose your MVP status. I thought it was like, I don't know, a knighthood or something like that. And you'd have to do something horrific to get stripped of it.
But people have, but that's the thing. I think that things like the MVP summit. I don't know who this was. This is hearsay. Don't worry, it's not a bad story or anything, but it's like under that, it's like super NDA. They might announce it a few days later, a week later, or it might even be common knowledge with customers. But if you dare tweet anything about what's there, then people have been escorted out, apparently, and not put on a plane home. But imagine that you're there for the week, and on Monday, 9:15. I'm so excited to be here. Look what I'm learning. And they get kicked out. My first time as an MVP. I've been one for 3 months and now I'm not.
Kicking and screaming.
Yeah. So there's, that unfortunately, there were things like that happen. But obviously, it's people's lives change. There's someone that used to be an MVP quite a few years ago, and it had a big detrimental effect. The community stuff, he's so focused on it that it had a detrimental effect on his marriage, so because he's spending too much time doing that, just like working or having a hobby that you're obsessed with. It could have happened if he was obsessed with building a boat in his garage, or Warhammer, or I don't know what. But you know what, Lego. It's like anything, you've got to balance it with the rest of your life, and if it's taking too much of you from the other things that are important, then it's it's understandable why you might sort of slow down, and that will be c'est la vie, I guess. But I think for people who were MVPs, then we always sort of say, well, you always are, so you've won an award several times, that you can't go around saying you're a current MVP or sticking a badge on your site. But to be fair, I don't know about either of you. Don't spend you probably said how many times I've been an MVP, and the word MVP more times than I've probably heard over the last couple of weeks, because it's not something that I don't feel the need to bring it up to people. Yeah, it's not that like those tropes. How do you know that someone's an MVP? Because that's the first thing they tell you. If it is, then there's probably something else that maybe they just need to get a little more confidence in themselves first. I had it on the first day that I was awarded an MVP. I realised that no one really cares. As I went to customer site, the salesperson there, I told him, and he's like, "Oh, that's really good," and then he told the customer immediately, which I wasn't going to do, because I got on with the customer really well and all this sort of stuff, and I felt a little bit shy to say it. And he goes, "Got some great news. Steve is an MPV."
Does that mean you can? Does that mean you can fit 7 people in you?
Oh, I'm very hungry.
I'm now very conscious that I introduced myself as an MVP at the top of the show, but that wasn't
On stuff like this is different, though. You know,
because I'm showing off. It's because I couldn't. 9 times out of 10, when I start the show off, I can't think of what to say. So I think, I'll just stick in this about me being an MVP, and it'll fill. So.
No, I think that if it's stuff in the community, then it's fair. It's fair enough, isn't it? Because people watching this know that, and they're watching this because that, you know, if you go down, you know, you gotta think of a posh restaurant. I don't know, the Harvester, if there's one near you. For those watching abroad, it's our best restaurant. You get salad bar and everything. Go in there and say, right, can I have a table? Yes, but I must assure you haven't got any good seats left. Well, I am an MVP. They're not going. That's not going to work for you. And it sort of goes down from there. If you've got to tell somebody that you are one in our industry, then they probably don't care or know or follow up, have any interest in it. So it's kind of like if you tell them and they go, "What is that?" then I think that would be worse than
that would be awkward.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, though, and I know you and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday, Steve, that within the community, you can quite often get people almost treating you like a celebrity, which is quite bizarre, isn't it? You had a particular example of that you were telling me about.
I can't remember that example.
Where you had a particular customer who wanted you to sign something.
That's happened several times, but I'm not gonna repeat
I don't want to know. I don't want to know what he wants you to sign.
No, just yeah. So I mean, I went to it's a manufacturing customer, and they're not far from me actually, but that was that. They didn't actually buy a project offers, which, you know, they didn't have to do the project. They were really, really keen and emailed me for months for advice, which I was happy to give. But they I think that's the sort of dividing line, isn't it? Yeah, people who really sort of follow blogs and community and are really into the technology, often they're the people that don't actually need so much help, or maybe when they do, then it is because perhaps they've went into a more senior role and or they need resource and people, they need to get good people in. But often that, if one of those folks is the doer, and they will be raring at the bit to do this, and they'll only need a small amount of help from somebody like us, because they'll have followed all our blogs. My one that I was with last week, when we did the hybrid workshop, and the whole environment was, he's running. I did a thing on HA proxy years ago, running HA proxy. I wrote about how you should change. You should change your UPNs to match your SMTP address. Something about iPhones. Shine them in with the UPN. That'll help for move to Office 365. All of it done. We did the workshop, and I literally said, honestly, that the way that everything is at the moment, we could run the hybrid wizard, and everything would work. And that is actually what happened on the day we ran it. So we were under budget, but it's like, when if somebody has been following your blogs and other people's blogs to learn about this stuff, they're the people I'm writing for anyway, and you probably are as well, where there's an earlier version of you or teammates that you used to work with where you have them in mind as you're writing, because they're the people who wouldn't be able to perhaps get help in, or would be very worried about having to do this and would need to do it, or consultants, people who work with us at the places we work at, where they, I've worked at some of these more generic places where they'll send people out to do whatever comes in, not just, 1 week it's CRM, the next week it's M365, the next week it's Hyper-V. And think of a friend of mine I used to work with at a previous partner, lives up in Scotland, in Largs, if you know it, Roo.
Oh, yeah, my wife's from Largs.
Beach holiday place.
Yeah, lovely little place.
I've been there, the amusements, the full works.
Yeah.
Lovely, especially in the winter.
Loads of Viking stuff in Largs as well, yeah.
Oh, even better.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, you know, he claimed, Paul McClatchy, I can mention him, always claimed to be a paint MVP just to take the mick out of me. And but you know, that it's people like him who, you know, he'd be doing Hyper-V, then an Exchange 2007 to 2010 upgrade the next week. Folks like that, you know, they need they need those kind of resources. So when somebody who knows that you're an MVP, they're the kind of people that probably don't need your help because they've already had it in a way.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
good point.
That is a good point because, you know, it's I guess when I think back to before I was doing the 365 stuff full time in a consultancy capacity and I was internal IT, the last thing on my mind, quite frankly, would have been paying a consultant to come in and do this for me.
Exactly.
Partly because that was the fun stuff.
That's why I decided to be one.
Yes, exactly.
I'm sitting there talking to this guy we had in to do Citrix, and I'm thinking, he's just telling me about his job. I'm thinking, we're paying somebody to do this. I mean, I don't know the technology, but he's one page ahead of the book than I am. You know, it's like I said that slightly wrong, but you know what I mean. It's like, some Microsoft person came into a customer I went to, and I will not say who it was, but the Microsoft person came in as a PFE, and he said he was there to do Intune. And he said, "Oh, Steve, I love all the stuff. You're right." And I was like, "Oh, no, that's good." It's like, I've never done any of this Intune stuff before. Just been told to do it. I've been learning about it over the weekend, and it's like that's the stuff that really sort of grates me, grinds my gears, because it's like that's not how that's not the person that you want to get in to do the work.
Yeah.
So I was like, bleeding out. I'm in the wrong job here. And and also I was on a TAP program. How many times can I upgrade Exchange in one organization? I mean, the TAP program's great because I got to do it over and over and over again. But that's not really solving anything for anybody.
Do either of you ever find your own work comes back to help you? An example that I can give is, and this is an example of how my memory is rubbish. I was looking for a particular solution to a problem not that long ago, and I Google is my friend, you know how it works. And I end up at my own tech forum post where I had the best response. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I had one where it was the tech community post that came up, but it was the customer I was helping the problem with Googled it themselves and then said, "You asked this question about 18 months ago, and here's the answer." So I was like, "Okay, thanks for that." Yeah,
I've done that where you've forgotten something you know, but I can't remember when. But it used to happen a lot more, to be fair. But there's certainly times when that's happened. I can't think of a specific example though, unfortunately. But I suppose it's a good thing, isn't it? Where you frustrate you like I knew this, now I don't.
Yeah,
What's happened?
That's an awful feeling. Awful feeling,
and also a little bit of pride that it's me on the internet helping myself.
That's kind of what a lot of blogging is anyway, because I know that, I mean, I wrote one and it's the most viewed blog on my own personal blog, and it's basically just a prerequisite checklist for hybrid Azure AD join. And I just wrote it because I'm like, I'm doing this all the time, and there's, you know what it's like when you get into the prerequisites, there's really for anything, there's just so much that has to line up perfectly. And I thought, well, sod it, I'll put it on a blog, and all the time, if I'm working on it, I've just got it there. And it's there as a reference guide. So it's kind of like a little notebook, I guess, when you're blogging.
That's always a good way of approaching it, isn't it? You know, I think when it comes to sort of writing articles rather than quick blog posts that'll remind you of things, it's sort of a bit of a shift in gear, but it's the easiest way to get started in it, isn't it? You know, it doesn't have to be War and Peace or have a story behind it. It is your useful thing, and if someone comes across it and it helps them, fab, that's good, and that's it's probably not going to change the world, but it's helped one person, and
exactly,
it's probably saved their day, or just made it a little bit easier.
Yep. And I always try and do that if I have a problem and I Google it in the error code. And quite often you Google the error code and you're the only person on the whole planet that's ever had this error code. And if I ever crack it, I always blog about it just because, I went through 4 hours of hell trying to figure it out. Let's try and help the next guy that's trying to go through that.
That's what happened on Friday. That's why I blogged on Monday, I think, because on Friday, it's just a quick blog post, just like that, really, where... nothing came up for the error until you know the solution, and then you might find a blog post. So, trying to think about what I had to search for to find the error, because then then somebody's posted something on a forum, but it's not quite the same thing, and now you know the solution. You can find it in one place, but with that again, that post revert back to the other way of doing it, and then of course later on you're like, I've worked out the solution for myself. There's 2 forum posts on this, and it's been happening for some time as well. I better report that to the product group, see what happens, because that's something that would catch people out, especially if they've got modern author, they've got legacy author, variety of things that have happened over since Microsoft wrote some code, and then in the on-prem product, and then things changed around it. So still doing it today, I guess. You see things, solve the problem. Problem usually is in our sort of job is you've got to reproduce it yourself. I can't just screen grab the customer's environment. Well, how am I going to ask? There's not a good way of asking, nor is that. There's not a legitimate way of doing that. So it took me hours to reproduce one particular error message. That lots of people would get in that situation to try and get everything into exactly the same scenario. So I helped building out my lab, which isn't fully finished yet, to a DAG that's in there 2010, to a full hybrid 2010 environment, just so I could run a setup.exe, click twice. That's what goes into it. It's behind. but when you're in that situation where you're on the customer side and you just it's blogging a solution, or it's something you can just write up, it's just good to get those notes down.
Yep, definitely. And it's funny, how you're building that type of infrastructure in 2021. Like just the other day, I was setting up an ADFS farm just so I could lab it. And I'm like, I would never recommend anyone does this in current year, but you have to know it and you have to play about with it, I guess.
I just remember I reviewed one of your articles the other week. I said to Natalie on the Practical 365 team, I said, why is Rue showing how to do the thing he's recommending people don't do?
Yep.
Let's put it as a different article. We'll get 2 posts of that, but I wouldn't recommend you do this, but
here's how you do it.
Here you go.
It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that thing where it's the instructions to, build a bomb or something like that. It's like, here, you shouldn't do this, but here's the information.
I skim read past it. I'm like, why are you recommending that? And then I'm like, well, you said don't do it. Okay.
That kind of just sums me up. I get into these conversations with customers all the time where it's like, oh, here's what you could do. Think it through a little bit more. You shouldn't do it. But the problem is I've planted the seed now, and you're going to think about doing it, aren't you?
Is your next blog post how to set up Azure AD Connect with password hash sync to start off with? You should do this. However, if you want to set up ADFS, here's the 50 steps. Or you could click this button.
That's a good idea. I'll need to Google it and see if anyone else has done it.
That's a brilliant post. It's gold there.
How to set up ADFS in 2021. There you go.
On msexchange.org, though, you would have there's a ex-MVP. I think he joined Microsoft and stuff. Henrik Walther, if you've ever heard of him. And he was. I did lots of posts like this as well. He's famed for sort of 37-part series on building Exchange or Office 365 with ADFS and everything. Every single feature. And I know when I got to a 14-part article, I get to part 7. That's one email. Can I have the rest of the parts? I'm thinking, I've not done them yet. I'm just sort of, I'll stop the setup and then I'll write the next part. I'm not, sorry, mate, you have to wait. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to send you them.
That's how I write as well. I write exactly the same way. I write one recent example of SharePoint syntax articles. I write them as I go, and usually in over a weekend, and then when I'm done, I'm not going to think about part 2 or part 3 until next week. So. But anyhow, I am just looking at the time. I'm very conscious of it, and we must ask our most important regular featured question on Cloud Conversations with Rue and Pete, and I will let you ask it this time, Rue.
All right, okay. So we are obsessive about Microsoft 365 on this show, but we are also obsessive about Terminator 1 or Terminator 2. It's a question of theological proportion, but which is the best movie? T1 or T2?
Well, Terminator 1.
Oh.
Look, in 100 years, who's going to care?
Well, that is true.
Did you not even get
We are getting theological here, I guess.
I mean, I give you a movie reference. Either it was a bad one, badly timed, or you didn't get it. I'd be disappointed. Who's the Terminator 1 person then? Who prefers that?
Oh, nobody. Well,
nobody.
We do have guests that prefer it, but they're not coming back.
No. So that explains it then. No, for various reasons, I think that's a good film. You know, it's and one of those is that reference. You know, I always think back to that. There's a scene earlier on in that in the film where they say, 100 years, who's going to care? That's something irrelevant to the whole thing, but I always think to that when something goes wrong.
I couldn't even told you that was a line in the movie. There you go.
And I was also scared by it as a child, which means it's a good film.
See, that's interesting because when we had Kat Greenan on, she said that she kind of liked it because it felt a wee bit more like a horror movie.
Yes, yeah, but that's what I thought it was because I wasn't allowed to see it until I was an adult. Because my dad was super. Like, I'd go into Woolworths and there'd be Terminator toys. I'm like, what? Can I have one? No, it's an 18 film, Stephen. So, and everyone's in this film, and I'm like, I hadn't seen it, but I'd see the picture, like the arm with all the obviously the robotic arm. It's like, oh, the blood, and I'm like, I've not been able to see this. I think the first time I saw it, I was probably not 18, but I illegally watched the film, and I wasn't scared by it, but it's a good film. It's a good film. I'm not sure whether Terminator 2 does it for me. Maybe. What was the really bad one? Was that Terminator 4 or Terminator 3?
I think we just stopped caring after 2.
Arnold Schwarzenegger he's back, just getting a bit too old for it.
Yeah, and there was that one that was in Salvation, I think, where he was literally 100% CGI because he was a politician at the time. That was creepy.
Yeah, I don't think I've watched them after that.
No, it's not worth it. Life's too short.
Oh, yeah. I think I've seen 3, but
was Terminator 2 the one where he's like, I've not watched this for years, but he's like in the lava thing or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's the end of
there. Goodbye, John. Goodbye, John. See you again. Like that.
That's the one.
Or not see me again. Hopefully, don't want that. There, that's it. That's word for word.
I think it is. And it's funny, we asked this question to every guest, but it wasn't even, there was a thread going about Twitter recently, and it was your top 10 favourite movies, and it never showed up in anyone's, including the host of the show. So,
no.
There you go.
There's some good movies in that thread. Who started that? Was it you, Peter?
It was me, yeah. I had no idea the legs it was going to get. It just went on and on and on. So,
tweets. What's your SoundCloud? Oh, this is it.
Oh no, I'm tempted to start some other ones. Actually, maybe we could have a running theme like music videos or I don't know. Who knows?
Favorite version of Exchange.
Oh, my favorite version of Exchange is Exchange Online. There, I've said it.
Oh, yeah. Well, of course it is. Well, it's yes, and Microsoft are watching, it's mine too.
Yay.
Keep those MVP awards coming. You know the address. Favorite Friends episode. It's got to be one of those things where people know the reference, isn't it? Otherwise, in deep water.
Oh, I couldn't pick my favourite Friends episode. That's impossible.
I couldn't remember which one it should be. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
I would struggle with that.
I know I think it started the one where, or the one with. I can't remember. It'll come to me.
I see what you did there.
That's a fair bet.
It's Friday here, so
Yeah, that's the beauty of this. We're recording this on a Friday, and we'll release it on a Friday as well. It might not be the same Friday, but you don't know when we did this, so a little bit of mystery in there. But
if it's raining in Scotland, then
that's every day. So
it's cold.
It's actually boiling hot. I'm struggling here, but I think it was about 20 degrees, which for here is. Might as well be on Venus,
Yeah, I can imagine if you go to the office, there'd be you had someone come up from England, they'd be wearing a coat, and you'd all be in your shorts.
Yeah,
I thought that was a joke that Paul, like my friend Paul, my only Scottish friend that actually lives in Scotland, I thought it was just a joke, and of course I went to some customers, and they're like, "Why are you wearing a coat?" Because it's cold.
Yeah. Well, we Geordies are like that as well. When I go down to when I used to go down to London before the pandemic times, I'd be like this on my shirt sleeves and looking around like, why has everyone got coats on? It's ridiculous.
Oh, to be fair, my kids are like that. This morning it was raining here. My daughter's like, "No, I'm not wearing a coat. No one's going to wear a coat. You really should take a coat. It's pouring down with rain." "No, I'm not taking one. I refuse. I've got my hoodie. That will do." Fine. Okay.
I remember that at school, how you had to be cool and not wear a coat. I don't really know. Like there was something cool about sitting in maths class soaking wet.
Yeah.
Remember it though?
Yeah, the smell of damp.
Damp
get you in the right crowd.
Yeah.
That's Scotland. That wasn't a thing at my school. Is that a Scottish thing? Everyone's got I suppose it's the no coats thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yep, it was definitely a thing. Definitely a thing. You were cool if you didn't wear a coat, and I didn't care about that. I was wearing a coat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I've been wearing shorts and a t-shirt all day, and it's been raining and cold here. But I'm not going very far, so I just do the school runs.
Now the question is it a Scottish thing, or is it a person who lives in Scotland thing? And a good person to ask that, we should ask him, is Andy Kemp, who lives in Edinburgh,
yeah, of course.
but is originally from Brighton, though, so he could attest to this.
Well, all his pictures on Facebook, he's always out in his shorts.
He's always in shorts, so there you go.
There you go.
It must be if you live in Scotland.
Get used to the weather, don't you? It's a lovely place, though, as well. You know what? The thing I miss about going to customers is not going to London particularly, and love London. I really, really miss going to Scotland. I miss seeing the sign as you go past Gretna Green. I miss the services where the A74 and the Days Inn. I miss there's a town famed for ice cream on the way into Edinburgh. Staying near there and having a curry. I miss all of it. I miss every single bit of just seeing everything and taking it in as you're on your way up there, and then the time you spend there, and thinking, if only I could stay a little bit longer there, and working up here. That's why with customers, and because I'm committed. Like, we've got a problem. I say, I'll be there tomorrow morning. Drive through the night. You'll see my Twitter going back a few years is pictures of me at the services in the Lake District on my way up there as I go. So I miss views like the one behind you.
I do love Scotland as well, and it's quite easy for me to get to. I mean, I tend, you sound like you drive most places, Steve. I tend to go by train because it's just I find it more relaxing, and it's dead easy from where I live. I can hop on the train at Darlington and be up in Edinburgh in a couple of hours, and it's such a nice train journey. But yeah,
I'll do both, and to do my bit for the environment, I'll fly as well, and. No, I'll go on the train as well sometimes, but where I am, sometimes it's a bit strange because you've got to change 3 times and all sorts of bits and pieces. And I've got stuck for 5 or 6 hours on the train coming down from Edinburgh. But usually that'll be the case. Go up to Edinburgh or Glasgow, and my colleague, when I worked at a couple of jobs back, he'd be my Scottish contact to get me into a Scottish customer in through the front door, because he said that he had to come with me, otherwise they wouldn't accept me. I vouch for him. He's not terrible. Even though he's English, he'd usually pick me up, and that's why I'd go to Largs, stay over there, up the road from me, have a few beers, miss all of that. To be honest, that's the best bit, going to places that are a little bit nicer than where you are.
Yeah.
And you might not be seeing the world, but you're seeing some nice bits of it. And Scotland's definitely one of those. Though sometimes it's better than you think, or worse than you think. Like, I went to Glasgow, but I'll just walk back to the hotel. Everyone in that office I was at said, "No, don't do that, Steve. You get stabbed." I can see that there's the BBC building there, and no, don't walk from here to there. We'll drive you. We'll drive you.
Especially if there's an underground tunnel. Stay away from it. You might not come out.
Yeah. But I love Glasgow, actually. It's haven't been for a couple of years, but I did end up off the beaten path a bit a couple of years ago for a customer, train up to somewhere, Fife, I think, and the station I ended up was Glenrothes with Thornton. It was a very, very quaint little place, but was really cool. But yeah, I do miss it. But
I mean,
I do miss it.
I maybe just take it for granted, but when I think of Glasgow and places, I'm kind of glad that I haven't had to go there for a year and a half, if I'm being entirely honest. But it's what you're used to, I guess.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, I actually do miss London as well. I mean, I used to get to London quite a lot until the pandemic, and I miss just heading down to King's Cross on the train and being in the big city. And but when I come to need to do it again, I'll probably moan like, "Oh, I can't believe I've got to do this," because we're never happy, are we?
Last time I went down, it just felt a little bit different. I've been to London on Sunday, and nothing's open, and you're in the city of London, you're like, "Oh, this is weird." And I went down 3 or 4 weeks ago to a customer meeting, and it was a bit like that. Like, I parked by Tower Bridge because I drove, because my wife's not vaccinated, and I was worried. A bit of a coward, okay? Well, I think worried about my wife. I'm vaccinated, so I hate to. I wouldn't normally drive at all, but I parked by Tower Bridge, walked around, and it's normal sort of stuff, people walking, the prams and stuff like that, and then got into the city, and it was just weird. Like, it's so empty. But Pret was open, which was fine. I'm like, hey, they're alive. I thought they were going to die. I thought we'd never be able to have a Pret again. It's be interesting to see how technology has changed, how people want to work over the future. So that'll be one to watch, I suppose.
Because it really will.
That I think for people, being together is so important, and some people don't have family around them so close.
Yeah,
and that I've got colleagues who obviously live far from their family, far from their support networks, and I want them to be able to get back to what suits them,
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird to see, but it's that fun of going to the big smoke or whatever, and I always feel like a tourist there. I've been working at
Me too, yeah,
for 5-6 years now, and I'm still. Like Jason started at my place, Jason Winwood, a podcast we started a year ago, and I'm like, I don't know the places that everybody goes to lunch, so I'm like, I'll take you to lunch. I've no idea where I'm going, and then we're into what's the market? Is it Fenchurch Market behind where they did Harry Potter stuff, and you can go in through there. I'll go to King's Cross and I'll be like, oh, there's the train to somewhere in Scotland that we don't really know. Everyone is just going, well, actually, that's okay, because there's loads of other people doing the same thing. But I'm just a tourist every time I go, even when I'm with people who know what they're doing. And I like that. I like that, because it feels a bit special, even if it is once a week or once every couple of weeks.
But I think the key to what you said there was whatever works best for people, to get them back to what is best for them. And for every person who is itching to get back into an office environment, there are people who won't want to let go of what they now have. So I think organizations are going to have to listen to that and find that balance, and at the very least, I think offer a hybrid approach, if possible, because it's not going to be applicable to all roles in all organizations, is it?
To sort of give a plug to the All About 365 podcast with Jay and Steve, the one I've got to edit and put online, which will be online by the time we see this. We're talking more about that because I personally think it's a bit of a concern. There's the technical aspects of room systems and so on, but there's doing that right, so it is inclusive. Because think about the opportunities that brings to people who are from different backgrounds and can't move to cities or don't want to go back to them, but also disabilities, all sorts of things where you've got a set of technologies that might suit able people who just move to the countryside, but also make decent jobs accessible to more people. So we want equity, don't we? We've got to satisfy you don't want these folks who do love cities, do love the life that gives them, have uprooted themselves and taken themselves there, who need that support network in an office, to then go in and find it's just not the same, and you want to avoid that problem. I may have overthought this. I probably have that potential problem where it's got to go one or two ways. You've either got more people to come into the office to satisfy the needs of their colleagues, or people are gonna have a divide form where there's them and us. I've seen that at manufacturing customers where office staff all got to go home, and the people doing the work, as it were, in their view, were still going in, and there was a big divide from what my customers were telling me. And you wonder whether that personal way of being able to spend most of your life at work and make the best of it, how it works for different people, where for some it's been hell, for some it's been amazing. You can't have it both ways. So technology has to fit that gap, fill that gap, and make it work. And that Tower Bridge meeting, I went in, and a good room system then just seemed inadequate because the content's on the screen, and usually, one or two people joining a remote, they don't need to be equal in that meeting. You're there because you couldn't make it down, but you're only going to do that little bit, so you'll come in for your bit. But if you're hosting the meeting, but you're not in that office, if you're the key technical person or business person or whichever role you're in, you're key to that meeting, you need to be as involved as the people in the room. Just doesn't cut it on some of these older systems. That the front row stuff Microsoft are doing, future vision of work, it's crucial because there's the eye contact like we've got now. We can see each other's expressions. We're in a meeting room when it is just even that sort of 3-4 inches in a corner or along the bottom of the screen at best. You just don't get that. You can't have a conversation across 15-20 foot room with a 3-inch and 1 inch actuality of somebody's head that you can't really see, and that's the bit where it can't break. I mean, that's a good scenario. The worst is little speaker puck in the middle of the room, and as consultants we've all been there, and that's not good. And again, that's where it's going to break. Also in an office, remote calls, it's not going to work when there's lots of people around the office. Issues with technology, but also issues with noise around you as well, not being able to, you're going to annoy your colleagues. All these are difficult things that people must think about. And it's the person that matters, the people that matters,
completely.
An understanding of what the workforce needs. So you've got your best people able to perform their best, and everybody's happy, and that's difficult. That's difficult. I don't want to be a HR or HR team or whatever trying to deal with this. And internal IT have got to get that. They've got to think about they've really got to get their. They've either got to get people with a high EQ in the team, helping them to understand that, or they've got to really sort of think with with empathy for others, rather than just thinking about the cost or the tech or the fun of setting this up. It's got to be people first. No, that's a bit
absolutely. No, I completely agree with that. Completely agree. I mean, this way of communicating as we're doing right now is absolutely great. I love it. It's saved our bacon in pandemic times for sure. The only thing that always makes me laugh a little bit is that I've never met either of you in person, so you might both be 6'11" as far as I know, because I've only ever seen you from here upwards. So if we were meeting in person properly, it might be oh wow, we didn't know. Hello, pleased to meet you. But,
I am 5'11" and 3/4, or as I like to say, 6 foot. But I will always be corrected by my kids and wife. No, you're 5'11". Actually, my eldest has brought it back to 5'10". But that's not even true. So I'm a average height.
Yeah, I'm the same actually. I'm 5'11", but funny you should mention that. The last time I got measured, because as an over 40, I got my over 40s health check. I'm saying that like it was recent, but I'm actually closer to 50 now than 40. So that's how, which is scary in itself. But yeah, you get measured when you get your over 40s health check and healthy heart check and all that stuff. And I lost a bit of height as well, because I was always 5'11", and suddenly this woman's telling me, you're 5'10". No, I am not.
What? So when they measured me at school in year 11, I was 172 centimetres. I've not changed since. That's without that, apart from the hair. I refuse to believe it. Get one of those racks, whatever they have in castles. That'll sort you out.
Yeah, there you go.
Warwick Castle I got.
Wow. Anyhow, I think we better wind this up. We're going to have a bumper edition of Cloud Conversations with Rue and Pete and our fantastic guest, Steve. So
I warned you. Sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. We'll just have to make the decision to either A, edit it loads, which we won't do because it's too good, or B, make it a bumper edition, or C, make it a two-parter. But we'll figure it out. But it's been amazing for you to join us. Thank you so much, my friend. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wind up? And can you tell the audience how they can reach you if they want to get in touch?
Well, actually, I'd like to start an entirely new conversation again.
As long as it's not about medieval torture devices.
Oh, is that what they're for? Sorry. Oh, God. Right. So thank you. It's been a pleasure to meet you, Rue. Finally. And of course, Peter. We've been chatting for a while now. So it was, thank you for asking me on, because I love the show, and you can find me online at allabout365.com or practical365.com, or on Petri as well. I do the All About 365 podcast with Jay and Steve, and you will find me on Twitter at Steve Goodman.
Good stuff. That's impressive that you're actually able to get your name. I had to put numbers in mine. There are other Rory Campbells out there, believe it or not. So I guess, yeah, we'll wrap up then. Thanks again for joining us, Steve, and thanks everyone for listening. Cheers, guys.
Amazing. Catch you down the road.